All right, we're going to get topical, controversial, clickbaity in this episode of the Legion podcast. We're going to talk about the recent rash of positive PED tests that have shown up over the course of semifinals. The I actually don't remember the numbers. Do you remember the numbers, Luke? How many people have popped over the course of semifinals?
No, I can't say I've
Yeah,
kept a keen eye on it that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, many to several. Seems to be more than one would sort of like have expected based upon years past. That said, I mean, CrossFit has been catching a lot of people using performance enhancing drugs for a while. And obviously, super controversial topic. People get real bent out of shape about it in a variety of different directions. So I figured we'd kind of lean into that, discuss our perspective on it, offer some half-baked takes on what we think is going on and how to potentially think about how people are using PEDs in the sport, why they would be using PEDs, how common it actually is, just all the stuff that people want to gossip about. So, Luke, spill the tea, man. What's up?
Yeah. Was that a British reference? Like a spill the tea? No? Okay.
No,
all right.
no,
okay.
no. It's American TikTok teen slang. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah, you can see that I'm definitely on TikTok then. I say the one of the interesting things that sort of come out of all of this is obviously you're having a lot more positive tests, or just you're having there's more positive tests coming consistently out of certain areas of the world, namely sort of like Europe, South America, and then also some coming out the Middle East as well. And I just think that one of the things that people are unaware of is sort of the culture of PED use in other areas of the world, how it's sort of seen. Me having lived in different areas of the world and sort of been in and around gyms and things like that, I can tell you that my experience here in Spain and then also in the Middle East is very different to what it has been like when I've been in the UK, or what I would what I think that it would be like in the UK right now. I've seen sort of PED use sort of down to the Gen Pop class level, and people sort of getting involved with that type of stuff. I would I'm not gonna I can make a good guess and a good sort of speculation to it, and I've sort of seen that type of stuff a lot more over recent years as well, as the sort of sport has picked up in popularity, and how that trickles down all the way just to the 6 p.m. class at your local affiliate, which it shouldn't really. It should be two separate things, and I think people need to understand that. And I think that it can be pretty harmful, because you've got people coming into the gym and they are just trying to get involved in a new sport, or they just want sort of some health benefits from doing CrossFit, and they could potentially get this idea of competitive CrossFit rammed down their throat based on the sort of culture of the gym, how classes are run, the what people tend to sort of prioritize, and also just like how people see CrossFit. And then that can lead to people wanting to really push things and then making decisions to take PEDs. And it's like, all right, this is such a mismatch, if that makes sense. I sort of, this is definitely not a situation where you'd sort of expect it to happen. And it definitely shouldn't happen. I can empathize and I can understand a little bit more with these sort of like athletes really trying to push it at the highest level and sort of doing everything they can. But yeah, I think that culturally around the world, there's a different view on PED use and sort of, what people deem as acceptable. You constantly hear of conversations in the weightlifting world about how, PED use in countries like Eastern Bloc countries is sort of almost state sponsored, but then you have things like USADA, I forget the UK equivalent, but then these athletes coming from these countries are sort of forced to do piss tests at 7 a.m. in the same place, like 2 weeks in a row or whatever it is. And it's like, there's definitely a different view of it. And I think that the bigger CrossFit gets, the more global it gets, the more we're sort of going to see this bit of maybe some clash of culture as well, which is interesting, because I definitely think that still CrossFit is very heavily sort of Americanized, and I think that like as it gets more global, this is definitely something that needs to be sort of navigated. Otherwise, you can end up in a situation like you have with the teams in Brazil in the South American semi-final, where you have I'm not too sure, but I think we're looking at like maybe a 5th place team going to the games or something like that, just because of the people getting caught.
Yeah, I was going to react to what you're saying just about like different cultures and stuff like that. And at least in my anecdotal experience, I know several people at gyms that I used to coach at who were just normal class members who were, using performance enhancing drugs. And I would say that wasn't like a top down thing at all, right? A lot of those people came from other sports where that was commonplace, right? So American football, bodybuilding, powerlifting, these sports all have cultures involving like rampant performance enhancing drug usage. And so, someone comes from that culture and is just switching to a different style of training, they're like, okay, yeah, like why wouldn't I keep doing this thing? And a lot of those folks had like no serious competitive ambitions, right? So, which actually, in that case, like I feel less like it's not like, okay, sure, do whatever you want, I guess. You know what I mean? Like if you want to take some Anavar so you can like be a little bit more ripped, like fine, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem the trade-off there doesn't seem worth it to me. But I don't necessarily see that as like the worst thing in the world for just a normal person who is an adult deciding to do that.
No, definitely. I mean, I definitely agree on that point. It's their choice. They're an adult. It's I suppose when I say top down, it's just again my own anecdotal experience. Is people I've seen who maybe just train in the gym where the idea of doing CrossFit is all about getting butterfly pull-ups as soon as you can and doing everything as you sort of see it at the CrossFit Games and trying to replicate that. Maybe the ownership or the coaches in the gym, the competitors themselves, and then they feel that they need to aspire to be like that, and then they sort of try to have these like ambitions of pushing themselves as a competitor, and then they decide to take performance enhancing drugs to sort of do that, and then it's like, yeah, it just, for me, that seems sad. Like it's not, but like if someone is say, okay, I have no competitive ambitions, I want to look a little bit better, or I just want to be able to put up some numbers and just sort of see how this goes, I think that's different. And I think that, it's sort of, that's obviously someone that's just trying to do their own thing. But obviously when we decide to play sport with other people, when we decide to sort of partake in that, then it's not the right thing to do. And then, yeah, that's when you have situations that are occurring now at the level of sort of semi-finals and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've seen it more as like a hack, right? Some of the stuff that we talk about in other episodes where people are trying to skip steps and not do things the right way or whatever, that you've seen people who are like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'd really rather not go through the normal skill progression and like put in the time to do this. I think I'd rather just like inject myself in the butt for a few weeks and just skip all those steps. That's what you've seen.
Yeah. And it's just like with the individuals I'm referring to as well, it's like, this is not going to end well. Like this doesn't like end with, you hitting your dreams or that type of thing. Like, you're probably at a stage of your development where like you don't even need to think about this type of stuff. You should probably need to focus on training properly and just doing, running the normal course of things, and things will sort of occur and happen as they are. But yeah, like I think that with just as is for me, I just see people who are just like trying to become like local competition hero, and it's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and then they end up training really, really hard. 2 years, they train way more than they actually need to, and they're just probably not as patient about the whole process as they want to. They end up quitting and end up doing something different. And this is like pretty sad for me. And I'm like, you could have just gone around that a bit of a different way. But generally speaking as well, like I've come across people and I know that that's probably how they go about most things. And, it is what it is. I think it's just, for those for those individuals, it's like when they do start competing and they do start to go to competition, and then like other people see what they're doing and maybe they actually know what they're doing, and it's like, okay, does that have an influence on how other people approach things? And when I hear people of minimal experience in sort of competing and stuff, and it's like, yeah, they're all on it. They have to be. They're all on it. It's like, well, how do you know that? Like, because that's probably not the case. There's definitely are people who are on stuff, but like, they'll sort of just come out with stuff like that. But yeah, I suppose the push for like, especially like here in sort of the south of Europe, the CrossFit Games is such a push for actual people going to the affiliate and going to CrossFit gyms. It's not like, hey, we coach kids, elderly people, anyone and everyone, and we're just trying to get people moving and having the best hour of their day. That type of you could say that type of ethos and culture around it. It's like, no, we are going to put you on a hatch cycle, and you're going to do this and that. We're going to make you train like a competitor, and it's like. And that's the sort of culture around it in a lot of gyms. And then that sort of trickles down into behaviors and people making decisions like that, which is not great. So I suppose that's my point on it. But I think we're probably getting a little bit more into the culture of CrossFit in different parts of the world, less about PEDs. But yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting though, right? That you've seen the culture in the local gyms in Spain or just, parts of Europe in general are focused on competition in a way that you see as like potentially misguided and toxic for the community. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say, I've seen competitive atmospheres in gyms. When I was in Chicago and I was coaching there, I remember at one gym I was at, it was like the 11 o'clock class was, a bunch of guys who work in real estate, and they just thrash out, and they just want to kill each other at CrossFit and golf on a weekly basis. And they're like that, but that's sort of like the extent to it, which is like, okay, cool. But then like what I've seen here is it's a lot more people sort of, 20s to mid 30s. And the way I look at it, and I'm like, none of you are going to do it. Well, a lot of you are just not going to do CrossFit in 5 years. You're just going to become burnt out, and you're going to just jump onto the next thing, or you're just going to get fed up with it and just do functional bodybuilding, which is fine. But it's like, if you go about it in a different way, if you don't necessarily have such a big push on like this idea of, okay, I need to become the local comp hero type thing, just then I feel like people can get a lot more from it. And I feel like it is a little bit more representative of how, I suppose like at the end of the day, everyone who runs a gym is under the freedom that they can run and interpret CrossFit sort of like however they want. But I think that's a little bit more representative of, how CrossFit should be, is like, this is something you could do for a long time. You can adapt it, you can change it and stuff like that. But the thing you probably shouldn't do is really smash it for a few years and then just get burnt out. So yeah, I think that's what I've seen. But also I am aware that to push CrossFit globally, there has been a big push on the games and how that's brought people in. I'm also aware of like how sport and just physical activity is different in different places. I know that, in the States, once people sort of leave university, people will potentially go to like, local sports and do that type of stuff. But I know that that's a lot more commonplace here in Europe. Like if you go to any playing fields on like a Sunday in the UK, it's literally just hundreds and hundreds of people playing football in these sort of like local league setups, which are all actually connected to like the professional level. Like it all trickles down. Anyway,
Yeah, it's the 11th tier.
yeah, it's like yeah, like, but I know that that's more of a thing where people just play sport for like a lifetime, where it's as opposed it's not seen as something that they really push in high school and university, college, and then after that they go to the gym and they just train to look good naked, or they do CrossFit, or they sort of become their hobbyist weightlifter, powerlifter type thing. So yeah, and I know that here as well is very big on people playing sport. Yeah, football, soccer, super popular here, and you're gonna have. I've seen it in local gyms. You have people, and they sort of do treat their regular class that they go to as their sort of their football league or something like that.
So you started to touch on something that I think is interesting that has sort of popped up with this recent release of a bunch of positive test results, right? Is the very cynical take that people are like, oh yeah, they're all on it, like everyone's juicing, like who cares, they're all juicing, I'll juice too, right? And then the other sort of like naive take of someone like, oh my God, this is unbelievable, CrossFit is falling apart. We have a drug problem. It's never been this bad. And I think that both of those are a little bit off, right? Maybe more than a little bit off. And so, yeah, I guess I'm curious, like what's your take, right? Is you think you a cynic, you think everyone's on the sauce? What's the deal?
I don't think everyone's on the sauce. I think that there's a lot of people that may have done stuff in the past or may have tried it. I think it does come into the mind of a lot of athletes, and that's sort of understandable, right? Like if people were putting in so much energy and time into their training, and it's not an easy thing, and there's this sort of like one thing that they can do that potentially help accelerate that. One thing I will say is that on the side who are like, everyone's on drugs is a big problem and everything like that, there is almost this association that those individuals aren't, training as hard, or they're just very, very lazy and stuff like that. And quite often it's like, it's not the case. They actually do those things so that they can actually, train harder and recover more so they can do more. And it's not to sort of take anything away from their work ethic. It's just the sort of, the decisions of how they go about, trying to make that happen. But I suppose I would say that, yeah, it's not, you can, there's some, when you've been sort of around for a while, you can sort of start to tell when, people's results or people's physiques, dramatically change and stuff like that. And they have been involved in the sport for a real, quite a long time. It's like, all right, well, that is probably being assisted in some way. Whereas if you do look at a lot of athletes at the high level, and if you look at their progress over, say, a 10-year period, you can just sort of see it being like a very slow burn. And in those cases, it's not something you would say is like, I would probably say that that's a situation where it would suggest that they are not doing stuff. But I also think that another thing people don't realize as well is that how once people actually do partake in the use of sort of PEDs and stuff like that, like what it actually does to sort of their ideas around training and how they approach it. Because I think, I've heard people talk about how they would just be able to sort of go into the gym and just, crack on like a beginner. And that was something that, they were really just after for years. And then, after they stopped, it's like, they have to be pretty headstrong to be able to sort of just continue with the grind, as it sort of was before. So I don't know. I can't really say. I would say I'm a little bit more down the middle than those two arguments or those two sort of those two camps.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's put a number on it for the individual CrossFit Games qualifiers. I guess this year it seems like they maybe stepped up drug testing a little bit. Last year, individual CrossFit Games qualifiers, what percentage of them were on or have used performance enhancing drugs?
How many people
have used is included, right? So like someone who would, played football or whatever and did a bunch of cycles with that, and then
how many people
stopped once they started CrossFit. Yeah, what percent of individual games qualifiers?
I would probably say towards half, maybe.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, pick it. Pick the number. 50%?
All right, I'll go down.
45?
Okay, yeah.
55? Okay. What do we want?
No, I'd probably say about 50% of people would probably they are definitely not doing at that time, or probably in like in the period beforehand. But yeah, would say that those people have had like some experience or have tried it in the past.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then what percentage of individual games qualifiers do you think were like actively using throughout the qualification process for that year? Right. I mean, obviously anyone who makes it to the games is going to be doing it with some sort of, clever cycle management, masking agents, designer drugs, like whatever, because they do get tested. So what percentage of the games qualifiers last year do you think were like actively using that season?
During the season, I would probably say you're looking at maybe I don't know, 1 to 2 people. I would say that most people would be smart enough in that situation to probably just not do that and just would do whatever they're going to do, post games and sort of through their quote unquote off season.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah. So I meant like through that entire cycle of the season.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
Like,
yeah.
Not just like, oh yeah, I like accidentally took my Anavar.
I'd probably say
at the games.
I'll probably say 10%. So I think that like generally speaking, probably people would, like you said, they may have had some like previous athletic history or something like that where it was more of an accepted thing. I think that's probably going to be more common than people actually being like, this is what I do. I'm a CrossFit athlete and I take gear. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be and then all right, what do you reckon? Go on, what's your opinion?
Yeah, funny, right? I mean, somewhat similar. I would have said that 35% of individual games qualifiers last year like have done performance enhancing drugs in the past, and I would have said that 15% were like actively using throughout that season.
Okay.
So a little bit lower on the experience, a little bit higher on the number actually using. Right. But I mean, like, those are both not huge numbers, but are like not insignificant either.
Yeah. And I don't think the general opinion is as cynical as sort of our estimations. I think generally people are just like, yeah, that's not even a thing. But it is funny because it's interesting to sort of see what other sports or people involved in other sports and what they have to say about it as well. People involved in weightlifting and powerlifting and strength sports, especially because it's a lot more of just, people just talk about it all the time. They're like, of course they're on it. They have to be. There's lots of memes and stuff like that out and around. But it's, I think that I suppose we're a pair of cynical coaches.
Yeah, well, I think you also, I am super curious to see like what the deal is, right? Because you look at something like cycling, where at one point it was just a completely dirty sport, right? It was like probably 98% of professional cyclists, like at the tour level, were using performance enhancing drugs. It's like, no. Like actually everybody is on it, right? And you look at powerlifting meets, of a certain character, right? And you're like, yeah, like literally everyone is here. This is like purposefully not a drug tested meet.
mean,
like,
wearing
on
a
purpose.
beanie with flames on it.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah. And then even like the natural meets, right? Like the natural bodybuilding meets. I remember there was something somewhat recently of like a natural bodybuilder who got caught, right? Juicing, where it's like, dude, there's like a whole like literally the whole sport is juicing, and you specifically chose to go to the non-juicing version of it and still juice, which of course someone is going to do that, right? But yeah, I mean, it is interesting just to get like our takes of like where we think it's at, which is, I think for both of us, like very much present, but not the overwhelming like not an overwhelming number of people doing it. Okay, another question, right? I haven't actually crunched the numbers on this, but it certainly seems like people on teams are more likely to be caught juicing. And so there's a few things going on there, right? Number one, there's more people on teams than there are individuals. So it just might not even be true, right? The percentage of people getting caught might just actually be the same or even lower. Number two, it's possible that people on teams are just like not doping with as much sophistication, right? That for them, like people on teams have jobs. They're not necessarily like fully invested lifestyle wise into the sport the way that an individual qualifier sort of has to be at this point. So maybe they're just like, yeah, cool. Like I'm just going to do this. Whereas an individual might have someone who is working with them and it's like, okay, cool. Like here's the drug testing protocol. Like here's how we do this. And number three, there might be something that is actually just like more likely about the like a team athlete to use performance enhancing drugs than an individual athlete. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's definitely, there's like you pretty much covered it all, but like there's a higher possibility of that happening. Definitely think that you're probably just going to see a lot more like casual use of sort of drugs and just like not being I think anyone who's hoping to qualify for the CrossFit Games is obviously, it's like there's an understanding of like the processes and everything like that. Whereas I do think that with the team, it's a lot more up in the air. So, just based on the numbers, you can have a lot more people who are probably just slack on that type of stuff. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And you know what? If I get with it, I get with it. If I don't, well, who cares? And I do think there's probably people who are just like, whatever, you're going to get a bit of shade on morning chalk up and then, people are going to probably take the piss out of them on social media. But like, other than that, like, because a lot of the time you see people and they still like gym communities and stuff like that, they still sort of support them and everything like that. And I think that, people, if they know these people are actually, there's a lot more empathy for them, right? I definitely don't think that people, like I think maybe the camp who are like, oh, it's such a problem and everything like that. I think they sort of expect that like if someone gets caught, that's it, game over, But it's not the case. One thing I will say is like the athletes who are like taking supplements and they have like substances in them and stuff like that. Like that's just dumb as shit. I mean, I understand that you might get like cross contamination and stuff like that, but just go to like a supplement, usually a supplement company that is like very like high regarded. Like, I don't know. The one comes to mind is like Optimum Nutrition to me. It's like, that's like a very big supplement company in the UK. Is very much like, is under sort of, they really try to sort of work within the sort of professional sports and they very much say it's drug free, but it's like, got some kiddo trying to go to the team game, going to the games and like, and then just buying like a supplement that's called like, extreme pump, blah, 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 or something like that. It's like, just don't buy that. Just like, it won't fucking do anything either. So like, like just don't buy it. Just like, yeah, I think that's interesting. At least we're not hearing about people fucking having contaminated kebabs or what was it? I think it was like last year or something like that.
Yeah, it was, we ate this meat in Iceland, and the cattle there, are treated with this drug, and that's how I got it. Like, yep, sounds about right. Totally buy that one. No, but Luke, you actually touched on something that I think is relevant, and might even be part of this situation, right? Team athletes, especially ones for teams that haven't qualified for the games before, whatever, they're not on the random drug test list, right? So like everyone who's a prominent athlete, previous individual qualifiers, previous like almost there individual qualifiers, teams like Mayhem or Invictus or whatever, right? They're on the drug test list, and they do get randomly tested throughout the training season. And so those folks are very aware of like, yeah, you know what? Like you're going to get a call and you have to report your whereabouts, and you need to be able to show up and perform a drug test like really whenever someone wants to get a sample of your urine, right? And if you're just like, oh yeah, we're whatever CrossFit in like whatever Michigan, and we think we have a shot this year, like you're not on a list. No one's coming to check on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might be, like, sure, yeah, I'll just take this. Yeah, I think we can make it.
Yeah, because I mean, you do see it. You do see with people who it's the people who are coming through that are getting caught quite a lot of the time. And I think that there is, there's sort of this cynicism around like, well, no one is going to, like the no one's going to like call out a positive test from like a high profile games athlete because it will tarnish the brand and all that. Might be true, but I also think that what's probably more prominent is the fact that they know that they can potentially get randomly tested. So it's just they won't take the risk. But then you have these people who are like, well, if I make it to the games one year, I can put that on my Instagram profile, and I'm gonna have all my PT slots booked up next year, or I can release my $10 program, or my abs PDF, or some shit like that. So people go in with that sort of mindset. And I just think that it's
Yeah, and also, I mean, knowing some people who have tested positive, knowing some people who were doping, and were never like super seriously competitive, but like participating at some level. A lot of those folks also know someone who is like a famous, more prominent athlete who is doping, right? That they're like, oh yeah, I know this person and they told me what they're doing. And so therefore everyone is doing it. Like the whole system is rigged and corrupt. So like, I'm also going to do it. That becomes like a big justification for that, right? It's like, oh yeah, like this famous athlete, like they literally told me their doping schedule. So like everyone's on it. I'm just going to do it too. Right. It's like a really easy justification rabbit hole to fall into.
Yeah. And I think that's like, because when people are around it, then it's just, it's a lot more normalized. I remember walking through like a bodybuilding gym in Kuwait, and it's called Oxygen, and it's where like, it's one of these sort of like bodybuilding meccas of the world. You walk through the parking lot, and it would just be like needles in the floor. And it was just sort of like, and around like bodybuilding, like in Kuwait, where like you had, people were able to go to the pharmacy and buy like GH or whatever it was. Like, it's just like, yeah, okay, I do it. But it was like, it's very normalized. And I think that when people, like, you got to put yourself in the mindset of that individual who is trying to push through and trying to really, do it. And then they hear like this games athlete who's, told them their doping schedule or whatever. It's like the sort of justification and the everything that's sort of going to be going through their mind. Yeah, of course they're going to be thinking that everyone's on it. They're going to probably just do it.
There you go. Yeah, cool. Controversial takes, topical takes, wild speculation. At least we put some numbers on it. I don't know. Let us know what if you if you have a take on what percentage of individual games athletes are doping. Would love to hear it.